So, I really liked Project Voltage. I've talked about it on stream, I've talked about it in videos. It was so fun seeing all of the Miku designs come out, and even now it's still fun to admire and discuss these designs. And one day, very suddenly, I had the thought, what if Project Voltage but Teto? And I know that our favorite Utao turned synth pop star has featured in some of the songs made for Project Voltage, and that she was featured in the April Fool's Day post alongside a design for a rival Teto from Take. All very fun. But I thought to myself, I want to design Teto for each type like how we got for Miku. So I did. So let's talk about that. Now, the first step was actually to pick all of Teto's partner Pokémon. We see with many of the artists who did Miku that having a Pokémon to look to for design inspiration can be a huge boon, so I actually got my chat to help with this on stream. Well, first the stream started as me playing F-Zero, but I'm bad at that, so I switched over to the Teto stuff. Having my sprinkles there to brainstorm with me was a lot of fun, because they're always able to come up with ideas I don't consider. And I always like making up teams on streams with them, and I'll explain how we chose what Pokemon we did as this video goes on, but I will explain some of the things we kept in mind during the process. Important things to Teto include the fact that she really likes French bread. You know how Miku has her leeks? Teto gets bread. Her name means loud noise, and we definitely kept her origin as a fake Vocaloid prank, and later on an Utao, which is a free alternative to the Vocaloid system, in mind as well. And finally, is the fact that Teto is technically a chimera. It's why you can really easily find art of her with a tail and wings. These are some of the main things we kept in mind for this step of the process. Once we had all of Teto's Pokemon figured out, I basically got to work right away, which just shows how long I've been working on this project, and now I finally get to share all the designs I came up with. So let's go down the list of each Teto I designed for the fan-made Project Wattage. I'm gonna go in basically the same order as the Miku designs for Project Voltage, with one exception. Psychic Miku is sort of acting as the face of the project, with her incredibly poignant Meloetta partner Pokemon. However, I've opted to make Normal Teto the face for Project Wattage, and swapped Normal's placement with Psychic. The main reason for that being the similarly poignant partner Pokemon of Silvally. Silvally is also a Chimera. This is also where I'm gonna mention that I'm not good at drawing Pokemon, so some of them are gonna look a little yikes, and like, just know that I know, okay? My chat and I found a lot of notable connections between Teto and Silvally. The fact that it can change types with its RKS system, which is presented very mechanically, felt relevant to a virtual character, and I'm a sucker for friendship evolutions for things like this. But let's actually talk about my design. I think it's pretty clear I used a lot of inspiration from Silvally for Teto's outfit, with the shirt echoing its chest fluff, her skirt resembling its tail, the boots are like its hind legs, and her bag is colored like the front legs. I wanted to lean into the Chimera angle, which means, one, a mismatched outfit, and I think looking to her partner Pokemon for that was a great way to have it still, like, look good, if not cohesive. Secondly, I wanted to imply those wings and tail of hers, which I've done by bringing in that original Vocaloid-esque belt she had as an Utao, and literally gluing wings to her backpack. This all created an idea of Normal Teto being pretty far from normal in terms of personality, which I think is super fun. I also wanted her hair and eyes to be basically unchanged from her official art. Normal Teto was the baseline that all the other types would deviate from. A big part about this project, and why it sounded so fun to me, actually ties into a different Teto-related project I host. You know how we have our annual Snow Miku? Well, I thought it would be fun to do Summer Teto, complete with my audience submitting designs for her, and I even made a song for that event. This is the second year of Summer Teto, so follow me on Blue Sky or Twitter if you want more updates about that. But a big thing I noticed with last year's submissions was how unwilling my sprinkles were to change Teto's design that much. Her hair especially was very consistent across the board, and I wanted to show my sprinkles that it's okay to alter Teto's appearance like how we see so often with Miku, and it was genuinely so much fun coming up with all the different ways to style Teto's drills, especially for Project Wattage, with some of the first ones I thought of being the starter trio. But first, I'd like to thank this video sponsor. Me! I have merch! And you should check it out, please. Stickers and prints of Twiins Ink original art is available over on Fourth Wall. I've made everything as cheap as it would let me because I want to provide cool stuff at as reasonable of a price as I can. The stickers are especially fun for me. I prefer 2 to 3 inch stickers since they fit into my journal nicely at that size. And look, even with such a small sticker, you don't lose any quality. You can still see the detailing in Teto sunflower here. And while the options right now are a little limited, I've got lots of fun ideas for more to come. So keep your eyes on my Blue Sky or Twitter for new merch updates moving forward. And feel free to share what you would like to see as well. Check out the convenient link below for cool merch. Okay, back to the video. First up of the starters is grass with partner Pokemon Maractus. There's a handful of musically themed grass Pokemon, but something about Maractus just felt right. I think its lack of evolution or competitive viability leads to it being pretty overlooked, which felt right in line with our April Fool's Queen. Maractus and its maracas gets me thinking about Jumpin' the Line by Harry Belafonte. Maybe that's a weird pull, but it gave me a direction to work in, leaning into the styles of the 1950s, when Harry was at his peak of popularity. And I'll be honest, I think I rendered the pattern on her skirt pretty poorly, but ignoring that part, look at how fun her hair is. Short curls were all the rage back then, so styling her drills to match that aesthetic was a lot of fun. I also styled her eyelashes to match the makeup trends of the 50s, with big wings. I also made her eyes extra shiny because something about photography at the time just really gave people that look. Next up is Fire, which was actually the first design I thought of, and one of the first I drew for this, which means it's when I was at my weakest for emulating how the Pokemon team render faces. Oops, oh well. We gave her Victini because she very much has achieved victory. She's gone from being an April Fool's joke to being the current big hotness on the scene. Everyone wants to use Teto, and also there aren't really any other music-themed fire types other than Skeledirge. Victini gives totally idle energy, if you ask me, which led to the general look for this Teto, especially the big, ribbony drills. This would be so fun to see in motion. I used some elements from Victini as inspo for the shape of Teto's outfit, most notably its wings kind of appearing in the ruffles on her sleeves. Coloring this one was tough. I just really struggled to figure out how warm or cool I wanted it all to be. I decided to land on these more muted colors featuring more blue-gray in the design. I felt it made her bright, fiery hair pop more. Also, yes, it does annoy me that the skirt isn't even, with her right side just going out further than the left. Last up with the starter types is Water, and obviously I had to give her Quaquaval. It's a dancer and performer, and so fun. I also loved how its orange crest leads so easily into using similar shades for Teto, which I clearly did. Quaquaval takes inspiration from carnivalesque performers, and I looked to those same performers for Teto's design. There's so many pretty outfits I was able to use as reference, leaning especially into ones with a lot of ruffles and jewelry. They kept giving mermaid in my eyes. I think it's all come together really nicely with the wave patterns across her dancer bikini fit, and the shoes are made to sort of resemble fishing nets, but glam. A lot of the girls I saw in my research had really long hair, and some of them are probably wigs, but I think they add to the overall spectacle of the outfits, which is why I opted to go with the extra long, sort of water spout shaped drills. Next up is the electric typing with Flaffy. Miku called dibs on the only 2 explicitly musical electric Pokemon. You can probably tell we did our best to avoid doubling up on Miku's partners, with one exception, we'll get to that. So instead, we went with the pretty basic route of do androids dream of electric sheep? Teto and other virtual singers are the closest we've got to androids in this day and age. And, well, I went with Flaffy over Mareep or Ampharos just because it's my favorite of the line. But also, I do like the pink color paired with Teto's generally warm aesthetic. And I still looked to Ampharos for inspo for Teto's design for this one, specifically emulating the shape of its ears with her drills, tied up into these out-of-the-way cute cones. My idea for this Teto is that she's a scientist doing experiments, and that she sucks at it. She's definitely always getting electrocuted while in the lab. It's why I gave her these bright pink rubber gloves and shoe soles. This one had a lot of revisions. Originally, I had her in a more normal shirt and pants, and then I decided that's boring, let's do something more fun, and I think the bodysuit creates a much more interesting silhouette. Our psychic Teto appears next. We were really at a loss for what to give her as her partner Pokemon. Psychic Pokemon have great aesthetics, but nothing that felt really connected to our Chimera singer. We opted to go with Kirlia because its on-point, ballerina-esque body language was at least music-related, so obviously I leaned into that for my design. I think one of the most notable elements is how the way I've approached her hair makes her actually hard to recognize as Teto a bit. It's because ballerinas have some pretty strict rules to follow for their hair in professional performances, and I wanted Teto to follow those rules too, which meant a natural-looking, super dark red, with her drills tied up out of the way so the lines of her neck and shoulders are easily readable. For her tutu, I looked to versions of Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy as the main inspiration. I feel like the dreamy, cute aesthetics of its costumes lends itself well to the psychic typing, which I pushed with the classic psychic purple coloring and some eye detailing in the bodice. I like to think that this Teto looks super confident on stage, but she's a total super fan of her peers, geeking out with her Kirlia backstage about how amazing all of her stage mates are. Ice was one of the hardest to choose a good partner Pokemon for, because basically the only option was Mr. Rime, and I hate Mr. Rime, so we went with Frostlass because it's just cool and pretty. A good aura farming mon. And initially I was gonna basically dress Teto in an identical kimono as Frostlass, but then I was like, oh, I'm not designing human versions of the Pokemon, I'm designing Teto, and hard pivoted to this, with crystalline elements and a dress that implies the cold never bothered her anyway. I definitely think it's one of the more unique designs I made for Teto, which is nice. Her hair was a challenge this time around. I like the shape of the cones with the unraveling curls, but the color was throwing me off. I wanted Ice Teto to feel cold, but the usual shades of red, violet to orange were all too warm, so I decided to full send it into this icy purple, but with the drill-esque tips fading to a more Teto-y red. The eyes are kinda crazy, I'll admit. I can't really remember why I opted to lean into the gold and green elements of her dress for the color, but I sure did do that. Rock is next, and obviously I went with Diancie. If Miku gets a pretty rock Pokemon that had nothing to do with music, Teto can too with her color-matching mythical, but ignore how Diancie is the Pokemon that looks the worst. I just could not get her to look right. You probably noticed that I very deliberately leaned into emulating Miku's design and art for Teto here. Since we ended up going with the standard theme of pretty rocks, this Teto felt like a mirroring of Miku to me, and so while for the most part when designing Teto, I tried my best to avoid copying what Project Voltage did for their Miku of the same type, I actively wanted this Teto to allude to Miku, creating like a bridge between the projects. So yeah, I fully looked to Megumi Mitsutani's Rock Miku for this, while incorporating Diancie relevant changes, because obviously I didn't want to just copy Miku's design, that would be boring. I think the end result is really pretty and a lot of fun. Doing a Teto version of Miku's look was cool, and it's fun to imagine the two getting to perform together. Ground Teto may be my favorite, and I know it's confusing at first, cause like, ground? Where? But let me explain. So, Vibrava is really the only noise-related ground type outside of, like, Seismitoad, so we were really lost figuring this one out. Finally, we opted to just go with Excadrill because it's got drills. Get it? Like her hair. And so I was like, how do I design this Teto? And figured if the whole gimmick we leaned into with Excadrill was her drill hair, then I'd lean into that too. And if I think of super drills like this, I think of an Ojo-sama. And so, oh ho ho, Teto was born. I wanted to lean into an older anime aesthetic back when it felt like we just got more princess type characters somehow, I don't know. So emulated that a bit with the shape of her bangs and eyes. Also, Excadrill's fur pattern, I think it's fur, shows up on her dress. You know, I also don't want to toot my own horn, but I did a great job drawing Excadrill. So yeah, she may be my favorite. You'll have to let me know which Teto is your favorite, but you gotta wait till you see all of them first. Hee hee hee, ho ho ho. Flying Miku is my favorite of Project Voltage, which means huge shoes to fill, which was super intimidating to be honest. There's lots of flying types at our disposal here, but I opted for Squawkabilly because I think they're funny little guys. Also because I was like, it feels like the most similar to Miku's Chatot, forgetting that Chatot was for normal Miku. And obviously Squawkabilly's rockabilly aesthetic had to be where I led Teto's design. 50s inspired, lots of polka dots, and bright red lipstick, this movement is a gold mine for designs. It actually means she features a lot of similar elements as Grass Teto, but in a bit more mature flavor. I think they'd be friends. I also don't remember why I gave her this big purple flower pin. It kind of doesn't go with the outfit at all, and just makes it look like she's gonna spray water out of it like a clown, which... you know, that could be fun. We're finally on Fairy Teto, and I can talk about how excited I was that we got to give her dash bun as a reference to Teto's love of bread. This one is a slam dunk. Easy. It's like giving Miku surf-edged. I love this. Teto's design ended up a lot more similar to Miku's than I really intended, which I think is just because the fairy typing lends itself pretty well to these big round shapes. Fairy equals soft friend, usually. However, I landed on these big, wavy, curled pigtails because my main inspo was baking. With dash bun being bread, I thought, how cute would it be if Teto was a little baker making fun breads and cupcakes? Which means giving her a complete icing-esque makeover, including her accessories resembling sprinkles and pants with ruching at the bottom to look like cupcake liners. This aesthetic was so fun to play with. I think Fairy Teto is a queen on social media. She gets thousands of people checking her Instagram for her new cute recipes. You also probably noticed that I didn't stray much when it came to Teto's skin tone, basically just altering it a little more pink to yellow depending on the design. I think Fairy Teto ended up the closest to having a tan, because I wanted the pink in her design to pop against her skin tone nicely. Bug Miku is another favorite, so going up against it in design was scary. I'll say right off the bat, I don't think my design is as excellent as Bug Miku, but I do still think Bug Teto ended up pretty fun. Bug types had us racking our brains since we couldn't go with diddle 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 whoop like Miku, and the only real thing we could think of was that Dustox learns Quiver Dance, and like, at least that has dance in the name. I think you could tell I sorta had no plan going into this design. It resembles her partner Pokémon more than anything else, but then it also has weird deviations like the skirt and thigh-high boots. This was one of the last designs I did. I think by this point I was mostly doing my best to not repeat anything I'd already done. The long drills are meant to resemble bug antenna, and I do like the design of this purple undershirt, but in general, I think this may be one of the weaker designs of the bunch. In stark contrast, I knew exactly what I was doing with Poison. Without Toxtricity at our disposal, we ended up landing on Crobat for her partner Pokemon, with wings reminiscent of her Chimera form, a vague idea of echolocation, and me being a sucker for friendship evolutions. But what do I do for Teto? We make her a toxic gamer, of course. She is rage-quitting Rocket League when her team starts to lose, trash-talking all throughout a game of CSGO, gets upset when newcomers join the game in League of Legends, Poison through and through, with her outfit being the casual, comfy hoodie of someone who has the luxury of getting to stay at home playing video games all day in their mom's basement. Specifically, for her hair, I wanted it to kind of look like thorns. We've been in a goopy Poison type user trend lately, and I prefer my Poisons to be sharp and prickly, personally. Next up is Ghost, and there's a lot to explain with this one. So first up, we went with Mimikyu in reference to her origin as an April Fool's joke of a new Vocaloid. Mimikyu pretends to be Pikachu, and Teto pretended to be new Miku, and that's how I approached Teto's design too. I wanted to lean into that history with Miku and Vocaloids, and I came to the idea of like, Teto being a member of the Church of Miku, having her sort of resemble Miku the same way Mimikyu resembles Pikachu. It's why her dress is designed with a lot of Miku's default elements, from color palette to shape to these black and pink accessories. Bonus fact, but this design at the bottom of her pallium is Miku's 01 fused into a single emblem. Leaning into that ghostly church idea, Teto's hair is made to resemble halos, and I've outfitted her with cool incense hanging from her belts, an idea I lifted fully off of Ashley Johnson's character from Campaign 4 of Critical Role. If you're familiar with my comics, you'll know I have a bit of an affinity for religious imagery in art, and I think it's resulted in a super cool Teto look. I want this Teto to cover Hellfire from Hunchback of Notre Dame. Dark Teto was a lot of fun. Her partner Pokemon of Zoroark is similar to Mimikyu, alluding to her pretending to be a Vocaloid, and I used a lot of elements from Zoroark for Teto, rolling with a general punk theme. You can see she basically shares a general color palette as her partner Pokemon. It's a pretty casual look I ended up going with for her, almost feeling like a reformed Rocket member turned rival. I think it suits her partner well and results in a nice change of pace for the Teto collection. They can't all be grand or mysterious. Sometimes you just just need a cool gal with a Letterman's jacket and ripped jeans. Despite the edgy attire, she'd definitely be like a big sister archetype. Gotta make sure all the shy little losers don't get bullied or something at school. I'm now regretting not giving her a baseball bat that doubles as a mic. Maybe I'll draw that as a bonus sketch. I have complicated feelings about Steel. Bronzong is a great choice, being a loud belle. It was also frequently listed in the comments for what else Steel Miku could have had in my video ranking her designs, and all the while I was like, hee, we gave it to Teto! Bronzong's big bell thing had me move in the direction of religion again for Steel Teto's design. Big bells just sound like God, okay? I don't make the rules. But this time I opted to shift over to a shrine maiden for Teto, definitely leaning into the red elements on Bronzong. And I'm dang happy with the result, especially with the blunt edges of her hair and these elaborate hair clips. There wasn't a reason I had when designing these. It was an instance of the pencil taking over, and I was like, these are so Pokémon. The whole look gives me the impression she fights monsters by moonlight, very Inuyasha. The thing that complicates my feelings is the shawl part on her torso. I just struggle to feel the color and pattern is working. I had wanted to tie in Bronzong's colors into her look, but I feel like it kind of just ends up clashing with the rest of the design. What do you think? Our penultimate Teto is fighting Teto, featuring the only partner Pokemon she shares with Miku. I mean, come on. The different versions of Meloetta is perfect for something like this. It's why Take also gave Teto the same Pokemon for her rival version. Fun fact, this was actually the final Teto I drew. I had initially leaned much more into Meloetta's pirouette form, giving Samba vibes in my eyes, despite its form title clearly referencing ballet, and while that was pretty, it just did not feel like fighting. So I went back to the drawing board and sort of ended up overcorrecting, I think. This is definitely a fighting type trainer, but I'd say this lacks any notable personality, looking more like a dime a dozen battle girl than anything else. I can't just keep redesigning fighting Teto though, so I suppose a standard battle girl will have to suffice. To be fair to me, it was a losing battle trying to go up against Take's stellar fighting Miku design. And finally, we have Dragon. Teto's name means loud noise, so of course we all celebrated getting the chance to have her partner Pokemon be Noivern. It's up there with Dashbun on the peak partner Pokemon scale. I wanted to lean into those loud elements, and so basically I reworked Noivern's design into a mix of wrestler and glam rock superstar. You can practically hear the confetti cannons when you see her, can't you? I had considered goofing around with the colors to not exactly match Noivern, but I found myself unhappy with any other options I tried, especially shiny Noivern colors. Those are so gross. I also had a lot of fun styling her drills into dragon horns and how her cape gets to resemble her chimera wings. And those are all the Tetos. I think my top 3 favorites are electric, normal, and ground, but let me know which ones you like. I also have made a song for this little project called My Type. You can find a link to that in the iCard and in the pinned comment if you want to check that out. Sometimes people ask me if they can do fan art for stuff like this, and the answer is yes! If you want to design your own Tetos or draw my versions, I'd love to see it, so don't be afraid to add me on Twitter or Blue Sky. I'll be posting all of these to my Pixiv as well, so there's another link you can find down below. This was so much fun, and I put in so much effort for this, so I'd really appreciate it if you liked the video or left a comment, and if you're jonesing for more Poke art videos, you can find lots of fun stuff here on my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Special shout out to my $10 patrons, Hut Mutt Bud, Messiah Complex, James Piper, Ranger Soat, and Andrew. You're all amazing. Thank you a million.